Hello everyone, welcome to the Newfoundland Symphony Orchestra's Rhythm and Recess video series. I'm Mark David, Music Director and Principal Conductor of the NSO. Each Wednesday morning at 11 for your recess break, you can join one of our principal players who will share with you knowledge about the instruments they play. This will be done by performance, storytelling, and art, just to name a few. You will also learn about the origins of our Newfoundland music and many other things too. You can access our free, easy-to-download student resource anytime by visiting our NSO homepage. Click on Education and Outreach and then click once more to access our Google Drive. Once inside, you will find videos about the orchestra families and the various instruments, as well as many PowerPoints and activities related to composers and their music. You will also find lots of musical arrangements designed just for you. Thanks for spending your recess with us today, and now let's get to know your NSO.
Hi everyone, my name is Rob Power and I'm the Principal Percussionist with the Newfoundland Symphony. Today I'm going to take you on a tour of the wide world of percussion. This is in fact the second video of a two-video series. If you missed the first one, it's okay. You can find it on the NSO's Facebook page or on their YouTube channel. In that first video, we covered snare drums and cymbals and all the little handheld accessories that we hold onto in the back of the orchestra. Today, we have a lot of instruments to cover. I'm going to take you through Latin percussion, world music, keyboard percussion, hand drumming, and sound effects. That's a lot of stuff, so we better get moving. Now, many of the instruments that percussionists play are considered to be Latin percussion. So that would be instruments that originate from Latin America. So by that I mean Central America, the Caribbean, South America. So these are countries like Cuba, Brazil, Argentina, Venezuela, many more. So let's just go through some of them quickly. You can hear what they sound like. These are the claves, basically two wooden sticks, usually a hardwood. These are made of rosewood. One rests in the hand, play over the top with the other. The claves. Shakers, there are many types of shaker. Do you recognize the egg shaker? And the tube shaker, also very common. And then similar to the shaker would be the cabasa. The cabasa is kind of a short shaker sound. It's basically metal beads wrapped around a wooden spool, and you twist it in your hand. Cabasa. I bet you recognize the cowbell. Cowbell, of course, is really popular in rock music and in pop music, but it's definitely a Latin percussion instrument. We use it a lot in classical music as well. Here's sort of a double version. This is a Brazilian agogo bells, which is actually a Brazilian version of an African instrument that we'll talk about a bit later called the gankogui. So the agogo bells. And then speaking of Brazil, we have this little Brazilian drum called a tamborim, and it's played with this multi-stick. Very distinctive sound. Tamborim. The maracas. I bet you know the maracas. And this is generally what they look and sound like. They could be played with one hand. And then there are some types of maracas that are a little more specific to a particular region or country. For example, these are traditional Venezuelan maracas. They're played a bit differently and they have a different sound as well. Venezuelan maracas. The güiro, especially common in Cuban music. The güiro is basically a dried out gourd, which is like a vegetable, and then it has ridges cut in it so you can scrape it with a stick. You can do scrape strokes or you can actually strike it as well. Güiro. And there's a Brazilian version of the güiro as well. It's a lot louder, it's metal, has springs on it, and it's meant to be played outdoors. That's why it's a loud instrument in what's traditionally called the Brazilian carnival. So, this is called the reco-reco, which is sort of the Brazilian version of the güiro. So, let's check out some instruments from other parts of the world. Almost every country or region in the world has its own traditional music and traditional instruments, and we use a lot of those in the orchestra. So let's move east across the water now from Latin America to Africa. And this is a double bell, gankogui, from Ghana in West Africa, played with a stick. Usually accompanies traditional singing and dancing. And this instrument often played with it, African gourd rattle, it's called an ahache. Of course, there are many instruments from Africa that we use, including hand drums, and we'll get into a few of those a little bit later. If we move up into Europe, there are a lot of interesting instruments there that we use in the orchestra, in percussion. One would be the Swiss cowbell. So this is a traditional cowbell that you would have around the neck of a cow. It has a little clapper inside so you know where the animals are. But we can take these little clappers out, hang up the bells, and then use them in music. If we head from Europe down to Asia, we'll start down in India, and some more bells. So these are Noah bells from India. A very different sound from the Swiss bells. If we head a little bit east, we get to the region of Tibet. These are Tibetan finger cymbals, often used in prayer and meditation. Usually you'll see them in a pair like this, and they're played this way. But of course you can take them off the string and hang them individually. Let's see, if we head a little further east into the region of China, mainland China, this is a Chinese opera gong, and we'll often call it a bender gong as well, and you'll hear why when I play it. If I play it kind of quietly, you get a nice soft straight gong pitch. But one of the reasons we call it a bender gong is because if I hit it kind of loud, you'll hear the pitch bend upwards. Now we'll head from China over to Japan. These are Japanese temple bowls, also used in meditation and in prayer. They could be called singing bowls, prayer bowls. And one way to play them when we use them in the orchestra is we strike them. They will ring for a very long time. And also we can sustain it by rubbing around the bowl with a stick. Now, we can't really talk about world music and percussion if we don't talk about hand drums. So let's take a look at some of those. So, one of the most popular hand drums is the conga drum. That's this one here. The conga fits into the category of Latin percussion, and we have three basic sounds that we make on the drum, and then we put them into patterns. And those three sounds will translate to a lot of the other hand drums as well. So we have the open tone. Then we have the closed tone, also called a dead stroke. And then we have a slap. We put those together into patterns. Conga drum. Next to the congas are the bongos. A lot of people like to call any hand drum a bongo, but these are the only bongos. Bongos are played more with the fingers and less with the hands, but otherwise there are similar stroke types in terms of sounds. After the bongos, we can go to Northern Africa, Middle East, and we have a drum called the doumbek. That's this drum here. Now the doumbek's played very differently. Uses the hand and the fingers. Slap sounds are different, open sounds are different. Here's that open sound. And then our high-pitched sound, we play on the edge with the fingers. With either hand. And with this hand, because it's on top, sometimes we will snap to get more sound. And then we have a slap sound in the middle. That's the doumbek. And then there is a higher pitched, sometimes smaller version of the doumbek called the darabuka, which is usually made of metal, played similarly, and is still from the same regions, Middle East, Northern Africa, but the sounds are a lot higher, and you'll hear a really different tone when I play it. So that's the darabuka. On we go to Africa, the African djembe. Played a little differently from the darabuka and from the doumbek. But I should note that djembe, doumbek, darabuka, those words all just mean drum. So this is the African djembe. You'll find this in all different parts of Africa. This particular one is from Ghana. And the main feature about the djembe is that it has a really strong low sound when you play near the middle like this. And then, just like the other hand drums, we have high sounds on the edge. And slap. And that's the djembe. So aside from all the drums and the small instruments, percussionists in the orchestra also play keyboard percussion. And there are many different types of keyboard percussion instruments, but the main ones we use in the orchestra would be the glockenspiel or the bells, the vibraphone, the xylophone, and the marimba. Now they're all made of different materials, but one thing they have in common is that just like a piano, they have the sharps and flats, which would be like the black notes on the piano, and they have naturals, which would be like the white notes on the piano. So let's have a listen to each one to hear how they sound different from each other. The glockenspiel is also called the bells. It's made of steel bars, and it's definitely the brightest sounding of all the keyboard percussion instruments, and it's played with very hard mallets. Here we have the vibraphone, and this instrument is also made of metal. So the bars on the vibraphone are made of aluminum, and we play it with yarn-covered mallets. So these are wrapped in yarn. They could be soft, they could be hard. It really depends on the kind of music we're playing, or maybe the size of the group that we're playing it. But there are a number of things that make the vibraphone unique from the other keyboard percussion instruments. One of them is that it has a foot pedal, just like a piano, and that controls a damper. So you see this felt bar underneath that goes along the middle of the instrument. When I push the damper down, that releases the bars so they can ring. And then when I let go of the pedal, the damper goes up and the bars are no longer resonating. You can still play them, but they won't have resonance. Another thing that makes this instrument quite unique from others is that it has a little motor inside. You don't have to use that motor to play it, but when you turn on the motor, it will spin these little fans that you might be able to see underneath each note. And when the fan is spinning, the sound from the instrument starts to sound like it's vibrating, hence the name vibraphone. So I'll turn that motor on. You might be able to see it turning, but you'll definitely hear a difference now in the resonance. So we don't have to use that spinning fan for all the music we play on the vibraphone. Sometimes it's appropriate for certain pieces, and sometimes a composer will specifically ask for that to be played. Now the xylophone is another of the bright sounding keyboard percussion instruments. It's normally made of wood. This one's made of rosewood. In fact, xylo is the Greek word for wood. So you've probably noticed this instrument behind me since it's been there for the whole video. This is the last of our keyboard percussion instruments, the marimba. And the marimba is made of rosewood, just like the xylophone, but it has a much lower range. This instrument is 5 octaves. Marimbas are anywhere between 4 and 5 octaves, so this is a larger one. If you know your treble clef and your bass clef, the lowest note on the marimba is the C below the bass clef. That's this pitch here. And then it goes up 5 octaves to a C way above the treble clef. And aside from using it in the orchestra, there's a lot of solo music written for the marimba as well. And in fact, the bottom note on the marimba is the same pitch as the bottom string on a cello. So aside from solo marimba music, a lot of marimba players like to play cello music on the marimba as well. So the last category of instruments I want to show you today are the sound effects. Percussionists get to play all the creepy, funny, spooky sounds. And some of them are really atmospheric as well. We'll start with the wind chimes. Over on this side, this is called a mark tree. Some people call these the wind chimes, but they're actually called a mark tree. This sound here you may have heard before. It's called a vibraslap. Let's see. Flexatone. You can bow it as well, get sort of a spooky sound. I've got this really weird sounding ratchet. Let's see. Oh, the goat hooves. Stuff of nightmares. This beautiful instrument here is called a waterphone. It has a little bit of water inside it to change the pitch, and I bow it with a bass bow. It's a pretty creepy instrument. You hear it in soundtracks, so especially of horror movies. Pretty spooky. Okay, then we have some fun stuff here. Slide whistle. The kazoo. Police whistle. This one's in cartoons a lot. The mouth siren. Lots of fun little bird calls. We have this little squeaky bird. This one is a nightingale call. It has a little bit of water in there to make that sound. Oh, the cuckoo whistle. My personal favorite, the duck call. Everyone needs a squeaky lobster. Clappers. Let's see. Oh, the bulb horn. You have to have bulb horns. And the pop gun. Let's face it, percussionists have the most fun. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in this week. I hope you enjoyed it and that maybe you feel like you learned something. Certainly if you have any questions about any of these instruments, feel free to contact me through the NSO and I'd be happy to help out. Thanks for tuning in to the NSO's Rhythm and Recess series, and I hope you have an excellent day.